At this stage, you might think all of this sounds great, and then you get started on your merry little way of being this wonderful new 2.0 version of yourself, only to immediately come across a block or an obstacle in week one, maybe even day one. Don't be put off, that is to be expected. I mentioned Carl Jung's golden shadow in the previous lesson, so we can think of some of these blocks that might get in the way as potentially leading to shadow distortions of what we're actually aiming at. What's the simplest way of wording this? Let's say when a being value is blocked by a certain fear or defense, it runs the risk of becoming distorted. That's probably the easiest way I can word something like this, so I can break that down for you bit by bit as well. So let me give you an example. Let's say you pick completion as the value that you want to start embodying, and you decide to start practicing and embodying it. So you're seeking fulfillment, and that's great, but you're finding the closure aspect of completion very, very difficult. It's bringing up more difficult thoughts or emotions than maybe you expected at first. So as a result, you just move on to something else instead. But the more that you practice that, the more you are practicing the avoidance of endings, and you're going to be increasing the fear of finality. And things inevitably do, in fact, end. And I know that's difficult. So to deal with this, sometimes a distortion can form where you simply start striving for something else to deal with that heaviness of the experience that you're going through. So you aimed at closure, but actually it's just resulted in this endless striving and a chronic sense of, let's call it unfinishedness. Is that a word? I think unfinishedness is a word. But anyway, let's draw all of this out diagrammatically to make it a little bit easier to see, because I've realized even just in wording that, it does sound a little bit complicated. So we aimed at completion. So I aimed at originally. So that was the fulfillment and the closure side of it all. But we found, actually, when we were on that path, what we ended up actually doing was more of an avoidance of endings and a fear of that finality and that process. So what it actually resulted in was more of I'm going to say endless striving. I was going to say chronic unfinishedness, but I don't actually know if unfinishedness is a word. If it is, then great. Go with chronic unfinishedness instead. So to be really clear on this, we aimed at a being value, but we are blocked by a psychological defense, and that created a distortion. So in Jungian terms, the shadow aspects of completion, if they're not carefully addressed and integrated, they can become endless striving. Just like a king might take the throne, and he might be a good ruler of his kingdom for some time, but then turn into a bit of a tyrant and focus more on his enjoyment of power over others instead of being of service to them. So this little 3-part diagram, it could easily be done from either direction, and it's going to be relevant for all of the being values as well. So the idea is that we might aim for this, but something might go wrong and it becomes this. That's not a problem, we just need to remember what it is that we are actually aiming at. So if we're going to talk about evil kings, for example, let's consider goodness instead. Sorry. So we can pursue goodness and focus on this sense of just rightness and oughtness, like I was saying before. But then a moral dilemma might come our way and we're not quite sure what to do. So we see something on the news and it makes us angry. But I want to be good, and a good person isn't angry. So if we're not careful, we might say that we're good, pretend that we're not angry, even though deep down we know full well that we are, and then put out behaviours into the world that reinforce this false pretense of goodness, the persona of goodness. So we might start to go out of our way to blatantly perform our goodness, if you like, just to show people who we actually are. Except it's not who we actually are at all. We're just showing the distortion instead. So again, going back to that idea, just like we diagrammed out completion, we aimed at something good, but it went wrong a little bit in practice. We could do the same thing here. So we said the goodness, and if we follow that along, what actually happened was we realised actually it was more of a bit of a repression that was going on. A repression of aggression. That's nice, and that's a nice, easy way of remembering it. So what happens when we have this repression of aggression? Well, that ended up with virtue signaling. It ended up with moral superiority. Let me just actually write this before I get carried away. So again, with all of these, I'm not going to go through every single one of these 14 being values, by the way. But I just wanted to make it clear because it's a dynamic that we need to be aware of. So we aimed at goodness. We realised actually, when it came to it, it was quite difficult to practice it. We came to a bit of a crossroads. And actually, when we started to look at the repression of aggression, that actually just resulted in virtue signalling rather than goodness in and of itself. So there's a bit of a distortion happening. It's based on something good, but there is a bit of a distortion. To paraphrase Maslow, you can't place a whole person on a spectrum, only an isolated part of that person. So remember, as we start to go through this, although we're highlighting one thing here, we need to think about it as how can we engage in life fully, knowing that all of these values, they all support and they all reinforce each other. You're not just goodness, you're not just beauty or truth or uniqueness or whatever it might be that you're focusing on, but instead you're temporarily elevating this aspect of you so that it's of beneficial service to your whole personality. You're not just a load of separate bits, but you're an interconnected internal community. So in part 2, I gave you 2 ways to start practicing this work, but here in itself is a third. Notice your distortions and then trace them back. If you notice that you've actually ended up virtue signaling, you don't need to harshly judge yourself, but instead just try to notice what it is that you're covering up by doing it, and then what the true, healthy, beneficial value is underneath it all, or on top of it all, in the case of me drawing it out this way. So deficiency-based virtue signaling, that might be a little bit more about narcissism and being self-absorbed to maybe account for a lack of recognition, to account for a lack of belonging, if we want to come back to those ideas from before on the pyramid. But maybe being-based virtue signaling, that might be just interpreted more as a distortion or a failed attempt at trying to aim at something genuinely positive, like goodness. That's why I said at the very start of part 2, if there's only, or part 1 I think it was actually, if there's only 10 minutes of this lesson that you watch, make it that section, because just being aware of your tendency towards deficiency or growth, which is obviously what we're calling it in this particular lesson, you can start to address the underlying motivation behind what it is that you are doing. So as we're looking at this here, just to make it really, really clear, don't just fall into this trap of endless striving or virtue signaling and start to judge yourself too harshly. Just think from a being motivation perspective. I'm genuinely trying to aim for completion. So how can I get back on track? I'm genuinely trying to aim for goodness. How can I get back on track? Be kind to yourself. It's about self-compassion just as much as it is discipline with all of this. So as we're looking at this, I'll give you one final diagram, given that we are talking about the uniqueness in this exploration of uniqueness. So let's pick exactly that value. So let's say I started practicing uniqueness, realize it's actually really, really difficult. And I immediately become quite scared and think, what if I'm not unique at all? Maybe I'm just a copy of somebody else. It's not too far from there to start considering yourself insignificant in comparison to others. They're the real deal. I'm just an imposter. If we go back to that sort of crossroads diagram that we talked about before. So a life of anxiety might begin from there, where you just start to compare yourself to others endlessly. So again, in terms of being motivation, if we map all that out, we had uniqueness. That's what we were aiming for to begin with. It actually became, what would we call it? A fear of, let's say, insignificance. That's, I think, relevant for this. And then from there, if you're feeling insignificant and if you're scared of the insignificance as well, then it's going to lead to a lot of comparison anxiety. If you're just listening to it all, by the way, it might be worth coming back round to this video to watch it, because I've just diagrammed it all out with just one point, an arrow, another point, an arrow, another point, just to make it all clear as to what I'm doing with all this. So a deficiency-based motivation might instead be based on the belief that you're narcissistically special and better than everyone else, and that's what makes you unique. But maybe that's actually just covering up a lack of self-esteem. a basic need which needs to be fulfilled, as we saw earlier, rather than being genuinely healthy and true uniqueness that we're aiming for. So again, it might take a bit of time to get that idea in your head, but just try to think about it as, what are we trying to aim for? What's the little block? And then maybe what's the distortion that's coming along with it? Play around with this idea, see where it leads you, and I'll leave you some nice little quotes from Maslow just to finish off this entire lesson.